Oh, what's up? Welcome to a new video. Alright, here we are in Blender. So what I'm going to go over now is basically how to configure Blender so that it is ready for designing stuff for 3D printing. I'm going to delete this light here, delete the camera by selecting it and then deleting it. You can see right there, that's where I do things on my keyboard and my mouse. So if you missed something or if I didn't mention it, you could just look over here and find out. So the first thing I would do is configure the units to be proper. So you go here to the units tab or scene properties, then units, a sub property, whatever, and then you just select the system to be metric or imperial. With imperial is what we need. We need the length to be in inches, and now when you do changes to things dimensionally, it'll scale by those units, or it'll use those units as increments. So I'm going to delete this cube. I'm going to shift add a new mesh cube. And right now you can see its dimensions are 24 inches in all X, Y, and Z dimensions. I'm going to change it to 1. So, oops. Alright, so now it's 1 inch in all the dimensions. But the problem is now that the viewport doesn't have any subdivisions. Just see, like, to have a reference of how big this cube is. So what I'm going to do is go over here, or right here, and set the scale to like 0.01. Now we have more subdivisions to see how large this cube is, get a sense of scale. So that's scaling in units. The next thing is just simple navigation. You can see what I'm doing usually by just this here, but some windows, if I go into like edit preferences, you may not see that because it's another window and I'm using OBS and doesn't capture that. But I don't think I'll be using that for this video. So the next thing is we want to start designing. So if we're designing, for example, an SD card holder, I didn't go over the design process, but it's fairly simple. What you do is you basically get a piece of paper out and just draw whatever you're trying to design, just a rough draft, and put some dimensions on the paper, maybe measure your SD card with a caliper, and make sure you know what its dimensions are. So as you can see here, there's a caliper, and what you would do is basically just make sure you know its dimensions. So the SD card is 0.95 of an inch on the width, 1.25 height, and I'm just gonna go ahead and write that down on a notepad here. Already forgot the numbers. Okay. 1.25 height. And then we got like a thickness of, I would go a little bit thicker so it has space. Like if we're making a holder for an SD card, you want it to be easy to put into the holder and not have to really like aim it right. So I'm gonna go with 0.15 of an inch for that, for the thickness. And then we need the width, okay. Width is 0.95. So we have our basic dimensions. So what I would do from this point is kind of make a model of an SD card using a regular cube, and then I could shape it later on to more resemble a SD card more. Don't really need to do that, that's a little bit extra, but if you want to have your 3D print look better, you can go ahead and do that, but keep in mind that the resolution of your print may not accurately show all the features you put into it in the 3D model, or like you'll have a uh, less precise look. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna shift add a mesh cube and give it those dimensions which we just took. So I'm gonna go ahead and make the Z the height, which was 1.25. And then we need the width of 0.95. I'll make width Y. And depth was 0.15, I believe. So there we are, we have it. The model of the SD card. I'm gonna go ahead and go G, and I'm gonna move it on the x-axis a little bit, just to get it out of the way. Let's try 2. That didn't move how I expected it to. There you go. I must have fat fingered it somehow. Okay, so we have an SD card here, basically. And we're gonna make it look like one. So on one side, there's a small cut. I'm gonna put that cut in there and make sure the length of it is fairly similar. So when you insert it, it like seats nicely. I mean, that's extra, you don't need it, but it's fun, you know. It's good for practice. So I'm gonna go tab into my edit mode, select that edge, go into edge selection mode. Oh, what is it called? Yeah, edge select. And then for bevel, it's here. And you just bevel it. I'm just estimating. Go with the view. This view is good. Just for proportions. Kind of like put my SD card up to the screen and guesstimate it. Okay, let's undo. It looks rather square to me. I'm gonna make sure my measurements are correct. Yeah, it's not. So I'm gonna make my Y 0.95. Okay. Let's select that edge there. Same as before. SD card up to the screen. I mean, this is my way of doing it, or you could actually go and measure. But we don't need super precision or anything. So I'm dragging up with the middle button being pushed on the mouse to zoom more precisely. A little smaller. That'll do. So there's our SD card. And we're going to use that to cut out like grooves inside of the holder that will hold the SD cards. And then we also want to make another model of a smaller micro SD type cards if you want to be able to hold various types. You could even do CF, whatever you want. But for this demonstration, I'm just going to do an SD, and that'll just save time in general. So we have the SD modeled. It's very simple. Now we want to make the holder model. So I'm just dragging in, I think I might go with like a fairly large base and then kind of pyramid up a little bit. And then in that top pyramid of it, that'll contain all the slots for the SD cards. So for doing that, what we want to do is first make this a rectangle. And we want to consider the width and length so that it fits all those different slots for the SD cards. So let's see. I'm gonna guess it should be like 3 inches wide. I'm scaling it for the base size right now. Let's go for 4 length and 2.5 width. I'm gonna move it on the x-axis about 1 inch, negative. And then I'm gonna take the height and make it a little larger. Let's go with 1.25 was the height, I believe. So I want it about 2 inches, I think. And now we're gonna scale this top face. Edit mode. Select this top face. And we're gonna scale it. So S. We'll select that so that little bubble's not there. This one. S and get it down and scale. Click 7 to look down on the object. S. And there we go, we're making the pyramid now. And just gonna guess the size. Of course I could do the mathematical calculation. What percentage of, you know, what's my width? 2.5 would fit the 0.95 width, or maybe like 1.2 width. So we have thick walls. I'm gonna guess it. And this will allow me to use the measure tool to measure the width. That's 1.7, so it needs to be a little bit smaller. I'm going to delete that measurement and select that face again and edit view. Scale it down again. I'm going to scale it a little bit. Actually, I'm going to keep it a pyramid. It looks alright. Yeah. Let's measure it again. 1.6, too large. Oops, deleted everything. Okay. Control Z to undo, very useful. At this point, we've done quite a lot of work, so I'm going to go ahead and save this, and that'll prevent us from having to start over completely, because Blender may crash. It is a very mature software, so it's been around for a while. A lot of work has been put into it, and it doesn't crash too often, but I like to do this just in case it's not Blender, but it's like my computer that messes up. So, save this at desktop. I just checked, you don't see this window, but that's alright. It's your typical save pop-up. Alright, so that's saved, and I'm going to keep on saving it every once in a while by Control S. Alright, so what we want to do is keep on shrinking this top face, so that's the right size for SD cards. Or, let's see, I'm going to drag this SD card model over and see how yeah, I think I want it a little smaller. So I'm going to select this again, edit mode, scale a little more. Yeah, I could totally use the SD card as a reference while I'm scaling. Let's already have a model of it, and I'm in top-down view, so the perspective is the best for this type of, guesstimating. Okay, that's good, and I want it to be a longer, so I'm gonna go ahead and scale this whole model in the X direction to 5 inches. And I'm gonna scale this top face. I'm scaling this so that it's basically gives me more space in the X to place a bunch of slots. So that's that. I'm gonna go ahead and start placing this SD card slots in there. And this will take much too long to print. I'll make one that fits like 4 or 5 SD cards. It's a little bit smaller than the X. Let's go to 4.5. Alright. So from here, I just want to drag the SD card up so that we determine pretty much the depth of the how deep you want the SD card to be inside of the holder. So I'm gonna go G, Z, right about there. I'm gonna rotate this along the x-axis, its local x-axis. Let's do 180. The SD cards will be upside down in it, which is fine. I want the metal contacts of the SD cards to be protected from dust and such. So that'll sort of help like by doing that, by having it like hidden. Yeah, so now we drag it over and put it inside of the actual block. Alright, so what we're doing now is we're just gonna duplicate this SD card many times so that we have lots of slots inside of the SD card holder for these cards. So G, X, or no, duplicate, and then G, X, control, and then snap to your increments of where you want your slots to be. I'm going to do 2 clicks, or no, 1, 2, 3 clicks. Place it, Shift D, G, X, and then control, 1, 2, 3, and then just keep doing this. Yeah, I don't need so much slots. I think I might shrink this a little bit. I just moved the holder, try to snap to a position here by using control. Click there, release, and now we have pretty much our holder. And to make it look a little bit better, I'm going to go ahead and make it a translucent viewport. Go into this view. Probably scale this down because I don't need it so tall. Let's go 1.5. GC. So what I've done is I went to translucent view mode, and that allows me to see basically how deep these SD card slots are going to be going into the plastic, and to me this looks good. So I'm going to go back to solid view, and we're going to go ahead and punch these holes into this holder using a Boolean modifier. So we're always going to take this object and subtract material that is intersecting with this object. So cube with cube 1, Boolean, difference, cube 1. And that should subtract the material. And go ahead and apply this. Where's that apply? They changed it. Just apply that modifier. Alright, so supposedly Control A is what you need to push to apply a modifier. I'm going to move this in the Z up, and there we have it. It's basically has cut out a slot for us inside of the holder. So rinse and repeat for the rest. Yeah, I had to quickly look up the new apply modifier, how to do it in general. So your mouse has to be on here on the modifier panel, and I'll just do it right now. So select the main holder, then add a modifier, Boolean difference, and then what objects you're trying to modify. So I'm gonna go with this one. I just select that one, cube 2. It's like a eyedropper tool, so it allows you to select objects from the scene just by clicking on them. So that was cube 2. As I could see when I clicked on it, it selected cube 2. But okay, we're doing the Boolean difference modifier that cuts out a groove, and your mouse is here. Click Control A. That applied it. Now I'm going to take that cube and remove it with the GZ. There we have it. There's 2 slots now. So same thing for the rest. I'll do modifier, Boolean. And I'm assuming they all got copied, so I'm just going to keep on incrementing. There it is. Keep 3. Apply. Oops. Go with this view here for this. Or difference. A. C. So if I move this, it doesn't have the slot right now. But when I apply the modifier, it leaves that cut out when you take out the SD card model. Alright, now we don't need these SD card models anymore, but I'll keep one just in case. So delete all those. Or actually, I'm just going to hide them from view. Using that there. Now we can't even select them because they're hidden. Basically, there's our holder. I want to go to solid view. And move this, or just hide it. There we go. We'll go to top-down view. So next up, what I would do is kind of make it look a little better. Some more. So we're going to take this and go into edit mode and go to the bevel tool and bevel that edge there. I'm going to bevel all these edges. So I'm clicking shift to select multiple edges, and then you can also click alt and click, and it does like everything that's next to in proximity, all those edges. And then now I'm going to bevel all those at once so they're equal, beveled. Then I'm going to adjust the bevel and make it how I need it. More segments. Could have scrolled up with the mouse as you're doing the bevel, but it probably only works when you do the shortcut and you're beveling. And the shape is fine. I want the profile to be okay. I go back again. Alright, the bevel shortcut is Control B. So now we're dragging, and there's already all these subdivisions. Scroll down and up to increase subdivisions of the bevel. I want about this much. Now I'm going to make this shape how I want it. Sort of like that. And I'm going to save that pretty much. Click out. I'm going to bevel these edges. Or no, that'll look. Thing is, when you bevel this, when you go to bevel this edge, and all these corner edges, and you're going inward, it has weird geometry problems because it gets limited by that vertice there. So you could bevel them a little. Increase subdivisions. The more subdivisions, the more taxing it is on your computer. Because it has to calculate all the vertex positions. So that doesn't look right. Undo. We'll go right where it hits the corner and stop there. Top down view and see how that looks. Looks alright. And now to make your cards easy to put in, I might go ahead and bevel all these as well. See what that does. Sure, up to the limit. Bevel to limit again. Bevel to limit. Bevel. Now they're a little bit easier to put in. And maybe I could bevel these again, but that might not work. Yeah, it doesn't like that. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and undo all of them and bevel in pairs. So that one and that one until they meet right there. Let's just give it a more zoomed in view. About there. I don't really care about the subdivisions of this bevel. Alright, so now your SD card should be a little bit easier to put in and not hit those sharp edges and catch. Yeah, see, when you try to bevel some things, they get limited by some vertices, as you can see right here. And it ends up being a really weird shape, which can be fixed. So that's why later I'm going to go through how to repair your mesh in 3D Builder. See, that doesn't look right at all. So I'm not going to even bother with the other side as well. I'm going to save at this point because we did quite a bit of work again. And there's basically the holder for the SD cards. I may actually scale it down further because I want this to be low profile on my desk. So let's make it as small as we can here. But the problem is when we scale this object, which is now one object, it'll scale the slot sizes. So now if you scale in the Z direction, the whole object, your SD cards will stick out more if you scale it down, or less if you scale it up. So what I'm going to do is, instead of scaling the whole object, is just move this face down or up. So there we are. Go to this view. And GZ, give it just a little bit of space for plastic to be beneath. Go with the snap. I mean, you don't need to snap, right? Let's make it how I want it. Okay. So there's the holder basically designed in Blender. And at this point, it's ready to pretty much export and make it ready for printing. So for that I use 3D Builder from Windows. Alright, so once you have your model all built, the next section is you need to convert it into an Stl file that is usable for 3D Builder from Microsoft. And for that you just go to File, Export, STL, and I'm going to name this for Blender How To, but it's an underscore SD card folder and export STL. Alright, we're in 3D Builder, and if you don't have this app, I believe it's accessible in the Windows App Store. Let me just double check that real quick. Yep, there it is. So go to the Windows App Store, download it, and open it, and then go ahead and click the menu and open, and load object. And I'm going to load in the STL we created from Blender, and that just pulls it up. And the controls are slightly different here, but it's pretty easy to get used to. Left click and drag to move the view. The right click moves just positionally, and the center doesn't do anything. Alright, so import, and it found some issues with the geometry or with the wireframe. And I mean, if you want to see the wireframe, there's the wireframe. Also, middle click and drag zooms it. Anyway, I'm going to click this button, which automatically runs an algorithm that fixes all the wireframe geometry. And that did it fairly quickly. And I don't need all these SD card models, so I'm going to select them. Or let's select this and ungroup it first, because it's thinking it's all one object. And now we could select everything, all these SD cards, delete them, and it's repaired. And at this point, this mesh is suitable for use in Ultimaker Cura. So I'm going to click here for menu, save as, and make a 3D manufacturing file. And that will, if you have multiple objects or models, it'll separate them out and let Cura know that they're separate objects. I believe. I haven't checked that, but I've always been using it, and it's been successful. So I'll save that as a 3MF file, and I'll get back to you as soon as I open up Ultimaker Cura. Alright, so we're in Ultimaker Cura now, and what I'm going to do is import that 3D manufacturing file I just made using Windows 3D Builder. And I'm just going to go navigate to it. So you can see it loaded in. And be careful when you're loading in things that have various scales. Like if you have a super small object, like, I don't know, it's a bushing or something, and then that bushing is going to be plastic and going on another much larger print, like a handle for a folder knife or something, and that bushing goes between or something. So those two objects are large scale differences, and Cura may think that the bushing needs to be larger through its programming. So first thing I do when I load things in is center them. So I click there and 0, 0 for everything. As you can see, this holder is fairly large, but it'll be able to print on my Ender 3 Pro printer. But if it cannot, then you may need to split it into two separate pieces and print them, and then glue them together later when you're ready. And splitting things in Blender is fairly easy. I'm not going to go over it, but basically what you do is you can create a plane and make that plane what cuts your part in half. or make a plane that's like not fully 2D but slightly 3D, but very small, so it doesn't really affect the geometry of your model. That's what I do to cut things. Then you can position the cut nicely. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is make sure my settings are good for what I'm printing with. So that's the last one I printed with. I named it Overture PTG, bit stringy, because it was a little stringy on some features. 0.6mm nozzle, and it printed well, good on 3/30/2021. So I'm going to use that and keep those changes that I just selected. And now we're going to create the G-code for the printer to execute while it's printing this model here. So the slicing generates it. Says 1 day, 2 hours, 47 minutes. So it's a very long print, but you know, what can you do? The size of the SD card is really determined how large this object is going to be. So I'm going to preview right now. And to reduce print time, I might make my infill a little smaller and not 100%. Let's do 10%. Now I have 11 hours and 47 minutes of print time. Yeah, so now I'm going to save this to a disk file. And for that, I'm going to need to go over to my printer, pull out the micro SD card, and put it into an adapter. So I use a SanDisk adapter. Alright, we're back. I was just explaining before I was interrupted by my battery running out of my camera that I'm just going to use this full-size SD to micro SD adapter to get the files onto my micro SD card. And that just goes into a card reader that you can buy, or you may have it built in on your computer. So I'll be right back. So we're in Cura, and I'm just going to save this to the disk and give it a name that is fairly abbreviated and compact, because the LCD display on the printer can only display so many characters of your title. So I'm just going to go with SD folder and save. I'm just going to show you guys the infill that I chose, how it looks when you have 10% infill on an object of this size. And I chose like a square grid type infill pattern. So that's basically the part there. It's going to start by printing this bottom layer, and the actual bottom of the part will be resting on the glass bed that I have on my printer. And this is the way I do it now because I've gotten fairly experienced with getting good bed adhesion, which I may go over. So I prefer brims because they actually go up to the model, and when it touches like that, that means if it wants to curl up on the edges, it has to fight the force of the plastic that's connected to it, that's adhered to the bed. Alright, so at this point it's mostly ready to go, but I do want to make one more change actually. So when I was designing this in Blender, I realized that, I realized only now that the width I made exactly 0.95 of an inch, which is not going to be good because it'll be hard to place inside the slot. So I'm just going to scale this up, which I already did, but I'm going to undo it and show you what I did. So it's at 63.5814 millimeters. I disabled the uniform scaling so that it doesn't affect the X and Z. So going up from 63 about 4 millimeters would get us up to 67. I'm going to leave those decimals alone. So about 2 millimeters of space on each side of the card for the card to be easy to place inside the holder. And it won't be actually 2 millimeters because it scaled the whole object. So these outer edges will have moved by 2 millimeters, but the inner edges, maybe half of that, because that's the way scaling works. So I'm just going to save it, the G code, put it on the SD card, delete the old G code, Alright, well, the model's pretty much ready to go at this point. Let's just go ahead and go to the printer. I'm going to show you guys some things about setting up the printer for printing, such as, well, you got to clean the bed, you got to level the bed as well, and then make sure your plastic's all ready to go, and you have enough plastic to actually complete the print, and things such as that. So let's get started. Alright, we're now at the part where we basically get to 3D print the part we just designed in Blender, and let's just get started here. The first thing I do when I design a part is basically send it over to the printer, which I've already done. I've installed it into the SD card, which contains the G code inside the printer. So what I'll be doing now is just leveling the bed, and then I'll clean the bed. I've already went ahead and set the temperature to 240 on the nozzle and 85 degrees on the bed, and that is like the proper parameters for the PETG material which I'm printing with. It's Overture PETG. I've done some experimentation, and that's the proper parameters you need for the print. So I'm going to get started with the bed leveling. You can just watch me do that. So when you're bed leveling, the first thing you want to do is home all the axes, and that will pretty much bring it, the most importantly, the z-axis to the point where it's going to start the print, or where it's going to reference as the 0 point for the z. And then once you're doing the bed leveling and moving around the x and y axis, you want to make sure your steppers are disabled so that they don't restrain you from moving around the different steppers. What I like to do is bring the nozzle tip to the actual point where the screw is right underneath the bed, and that's where it'll most likely have the most accurate chance of adjusting. And another thing the glass print beds will offer is pretty much a surface that clings on to your model as soon as it cools a little bit, like the plastic contracts, and that allows it to bond really strongly to the glass and not have adhesion issues later down the line. So what I do for each of these points is pretty much wait until I feel a slight resistance on the paper, and that's where I stop adjusting these adjustment knobs. Alright, now I'm going to home the printer one more time, and that's pretty much the point where I'll be able to start printing. Alright, so last step before we get started printing is we have to clean the bed, and that improves adhesion, and well, overall just will increase your success rate. Because, I mean, you could do like 2 prints back to back and not have an issue, but like you never know. Like, you want to take the safe route rather than risking it, unless it's like small prints, you know. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and disable the steppers and lift up the z-axis. And while doing this cleaning, I sometimes use, for the stock bed, actually I mainly use 70% isopropyl alcohol, I believe, or something like that. And that really gets out all of the previous, whatever plastic was left over, residue. And for this bed, the manufacturer states that you need to have just plain water as the cleaning. Whatever cleaning solution you use, it has to be just water. And I don't know about soap, I didn't read up on that. but that's what I use. I just get a microfiber cloth and wet it and wipe the bed. Alright, so here's my cloth. It's wet. The bed is now at 85 degrees, so you're going to have to do this at 85 degrees Celsius. So you're going to have to do this pretty quickly. And just try to get the spots like with a single pass. I noticed like does a pretty okay job. So here we go. We'll flip over that microfiber. I'll do one more pass the other direction. And that's a pretty clean bed at this point. I didn't put too much pressure while I was cleaning it because that may mess with the adjustment of the bed level. And I still may have already pushed something out of level, but we'll find out here in a second after I start the print. So let's get started. First thing I'll do is home the axes. And whenever something's moving and I'm just starting a print, this is the most error-prone time of the print, because like you may have issues with adhesion, you may have issues with your G-code, you may have like anything going on. Even your printer may have some technical problems. There it is. Okay. So I just hit the limit switch, and that's homed. And I already did all the other axes. When I was moving the axes around, I kind of felt for the resistance of these bearings, and to me it feels like it's nothing's loose, nothing's wobbling, and the travel of all these linear actuators basically is smooth. There's like not any tight spots that like snag a little. So I'm pretty happy about like how it stayed. Like I didn't use this printer for probably like a month or two, or even more probably, but it stayed like pretty much in working condition. Like it didn't really degrade. I checked the Z-axis. It has been greased, and if you don't have any grease on the Z-axis lead screw, potentially what may happen is you may have issues with like the different steps with the layers. You'll have parts that are thin, parts that are a little bit thicker than usual because it couldn't lift it or it lifted it too far. So I'm going to start this print. Alright, here we go. I'm going to go and select the file that I put onto this SD card, and that would be the SD holder .g-code. So clicking that, it's heating up the extruder. It's going to double check temps. It's going to auto level, and we'll just watch the first layer, see how it does. I'm going to be right back with a flashlight. I actually prefer to see everything really well. And I'm going to get ready with the Z hop tune. Baby step Z. The plastic is going down, which is good. And sometimes what I do is I baby step the Z. As it's printing to give it a better adhesion. Yeah, because it was printing a little too high, so I just gave it 2 micro or baby steps down in the Z direction, and that got it to squish the plastic a little bit better on the bed. And it seems like the thickness is even. Alright, we just had a spot that kind of it like didn't extrude for like 2 millimeters. Okay, but hopefully everything kind of evens out and becomes better as it prints here. This brim. But if not, we'll just adjust settings, adjust level, and you know it could even be like the plastic has been out collecting moisture for a long time, so that could be affecting how it's extruding or how it's able to print with it. We had another spot there that didn't quite lay down. So what I'm gonna do is go baby step Z, and right when it's about to hit that point, I'm gonna give it a one step down and see how that affects adhesion. So everything here is pretty okay, but that top left corner, not really good adhesion. So I may need to adjust the bed level on that side. Yeah, actually one step up might be the way to go there. And then one step down. I'll try both. So I tried one step up and it did okay, but we'll try it and see what exactly is the best route to go here. Like, usually it's a good idea to just catch issues early on so that later you're not so disappointed that your print didn't turn out well. And yeah, this height for that corner is not working. So I believe it needs to be squished. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen this adjustment screw in that corner on the fly. Just a tiny bit. And then watch that next line as it goes around that corner. It's doing a little better now that I gave it that baby step, or I don't know. We'll see right now. I just gave it a little less distance to play with as it's laying down that plastic. And looks like that was what was needed for the print. And it's now laying down these lines pretty much perfectly. I don't see anything wrong now. So this is why I print a brim. It's a good time to just fine tune all the settings on the fly as it's printing. I'm going to go ahead and wash that corner again. Looks okay. What I would like to see is the lines sort of squishing just a tiniest fraction into the other line. So like laterally, the adhesion. Alright, this is a boring bit. You're probably just going to have this fast forwarded or cut from the video. Alright, so the progress of the print right now is it's on its second layer and it hasn't had any mistakes happen yet on it, and all the layers are going down nicely. There's not any issues with extrusion. It has printed the outer walls for this second layer, and it's just going in and filling in the middle part. What you see there on the edges peeling up is the very first lines being put down with the printer. At that point, I mean, the plastic was probably not ideal, and I also had to do an adjustment on the Z height and baby step it so that the bed went 2 clicks higher to the nozzle, or the Z lead screw actually is the one that moved, obviously. Some printers have the bed move, but for this one it's the actual whole assembly that carries the nozzle. So there's no issues going on with extrusion, and at this point I'm fairly confident that the rest of the print will go on and be successful. So I'm going to go ahead and set up a time lapse and let you guys see the progress. Alright, so the print just finished now. I'm going to pick it up here. The great thing about this glass bed is basically once it cools down, you don't need to really force it off the bed. It just comes off very easily. There's the holder going into top-down view as if I'm in Blender. But that's how it looks. You can see over here, there's a line where we paused it overnight, and everything else looks really clean. Just a little bit of fuzz where it extrudes material, but not too much. I have a setting turned on that actually minimizes the stringing. There's the bottom. This is going to be the actual bottom of the piece. All I'll do afterward is basically remove this brim here around the edge. I'll even do that live. It comes off pretty easily. Like you almost even don't need any tools. But if it is actually pretty hard to remove, just to use some pliers, a knife, and whatnot. And I'm going to be right back with an SD card. We're going to test the fit. Alright, we're back. I just got an SD card that I had laying around, and we're going to test the fit right now. Make sure it's proper. So it goes right in, no problem. And you take it out, it's fairly easy. And I designed it so that it fit upside down, but obviously you could put them in any way you want and it still works. But the upside down was just for these metal contacts to not get dirty. So it works fine, and I can store, looks like, up to 8 of them. So that works for me. I don't have too many SD cards. So overall, I believe it's a successful print.